Will your communication trait differences with your roommate negatively or positively affect your interpersonal relationships with one another? What factors causes roommate breakups, and how can we improve those relationships? My name is Aisha. My topic is how interpersonal communication plays a role in the compatibility of roommates. My roommate Sarah and I have been living together for about a year now, and we do have our misunderstandings due to our differences in communication traits. And sometimes she comes off as overly aggressive because she does have a high willingness to communicate, so which means she communicates everything with me, and it comes off as a nitpicking at times. And I'm the complete opposite. I have a low verbal aggressiveness, and I come off as a little passive aggressive sometimes. um, and that those differences we do clash because of that, and our differences in our beliefs or values and how we prioritize things in our lives is completely opposite. And living with a roommate is very challenging because of that. um, and self-awareness plays an important role in having a roommate because you constantly have to think about how the other person is perceiving what you're saying. And we both are very competitive with one another, which affects our self-esteem and our evaluation of ourselves. And the differences in how we express ourselves affects our attitudes and the beliefs, which is a factor of our interpersonal relationship. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about how self-concept could affect your relationship with your roommate. And I'm also going to discuss the importance of self-awareness and different types of ways to improve your communication skills with one another. And this article that I chose, which is Deciding to Dissolve an Individual and Relationship Level Predictors of Roommate Breakup, it talks about how the compatibility of roommates and what causes conflict between one another. Your willingness to communicate, your interpersonal communication, competence, and verbal aggressiveness were all considered in this case. The article is related to Chapter 4, which talks about self-concept and the role it plays in interpersonal communication. It talks about the 3 types of self-awareness and how we view ourselves relates to our relationships and how we communicate with others. It also talks about how we can improve our communication using other orientation. The partner-oriented model predicts that only roommate characteristics will affect a person's desire to change roommates. The model predicts that people with roommates who have poor mental health, disagreeable personality, poor social and communication skills will be more likely to incite desires to dissolve than people whose roommates are healthy and skilled. The effects predicted by the partner-oriented model. The research showed that self-concepts are proven to have better roommate relationship. It explains when both roommates were high in interpersonal communication competence, and when both roommates were low in verbal aggressiveness, shows that you're more compatible living together. In short, find someone who is more like you, communication trait wise. Um, and I chose to evaluate my relationship with my roommate Sarah because our self-concept is very different from one another, which causes conflict. We both lack in symbolic self-awareness, which is communicating to others or each other about our own behavior, personality, and mood. I found that to avoid conflict, we must work together to better understand one another. We both see things in different lenses and are strong-willed about our beliefs and our values. So I think that talking about our traits will help understand one another. She believes that criticism will motivate a person to improve their behavior, and I believe that leading by example is a better way to influence someone's behavior. this article definitely shined light in the differences that my roommate and I have, and I think it would be helpful for both of us if an objective self-awareness with each other, because we both were comfortable with each other. We don't reflect our actions quite often, which results to hurting each other's feelings unintentionally. And I learned that improving our communications involves the other oriented communication, which puts emphasis in communication that is thoughtful about the needs and goals of the other person. So, in short, to put a little less focus on yourself and more on other people. This living with someone is definitely challenging because of the beliefs and the values is completely different, and how we communicate with one another, our competitiveness with each other does play a role in our self-esteem, the way we view ourselves, and affects our relationships with others. In this presentation, I talked about how interpersonal communication affects how we are with one another and how we can improve ourselves and better our relationships, our self-concept and perception of ourselves, and are contributing factors in the communication we have with others. So I tend to focus on the person's behavior instead of trying to acknowledge my wrongdoings at times. And learning more about self-concepts forces me to take a look in the mirror and evaluate what I can do to improve my interpersonal relationships with others. Thank you.